Okay, so if you plan to use foam for your bag, then you need to do your overlay pocket first. It's a lot easier to do it before you add the foam. So I like to cut my foam just a little bit bigger than the panel that I'm attaching it to. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch down both sides and along the bottom and along this top curve. I'm not going to do these triangle bits or those top sort of straight bits at the top. So I'm just going to sew baste this in place using an 1/8 inch seam allowance and my longest stitch length. Oop. So I'm coming down one side. I'm going to turn the panel around. I'm just going to flatten it out and make sure that it's nice and tight on that foam. And then I'm going to come up the other side. Don't need to backstitch because you're going to be taking these stitches out anyway. I'm going to now do this top curve. And then stretching it out, making sure it's nice and flat from top to bottom and coming along this bottom edge. I've done that at the longest stitch length I have on my machine, which for me is a 6. For most people is about a 4, sometimes a 5, but the longest stitch length you have. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to trim off the foam from around the outside. It makes it so much easier than cutting your foam and then trying to fit your foam onto the back of your panel, because they never ever cut exactly the same size no matter how careful you are. I know some people say this is wasteful. For me, it's just a lot easier. So we're just going to go all the way around the outside into those points. You could do this with a rotary cutter, but I just find it's just as easy to do with scissors at this point. And there we have our foam attached to our front panel. I'll do the same for the back panel. After this, everything is exactly the same as it is in all of the other videos, the only difference being that when you've sewn all the seams together on the exterior, so when you sew the sides and the base seams, you'll need to take out your basting stitches and trim away the foam from the seam allowance before you press open your seams on the base, sides, and on both sides. And then when you fit the lining into your main bag, you're going to have to do the same thing when you come around this top edge. You're going to stitch it, but then remove the basting stitches and remove the foam from the seam allowance. Now, if you're very, very new to bag making, foam may be a little beyond you. If you're a more experienced bag maker, then you'll know what you're doing anyway. But this is an experiment to see how this looks using foam. This is headliner foam, 3mm headliner foam, only because I haven't got a great deal of Styleville in stock, so I'm using what I've got. Okay, for those using foam, I've now attached my front and my rear panels together, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to use my seam ripper or your tool of choice, and I'm going to remove the basting stitches from my foam on all of the sides, or sorry, on the sides and the bottom. So that's one side done, or one half of one side done, and I'm going to remove the foam. Now you'll notice that I keep my scissors flat to the panel, which miters the edge of the foam, making it a little less bulky, and it allows the sides of the bag to sit nicer once it's open and ready to go. And you're going to do this on both sides, at the sides, on both sides of both sides. That doesn't make sense, does it? But and trim off as much as you can without trimming through your stitching. You can always go back and take off an extra slither. And you can see there, you can see the fabric with the interfacing on it. I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side of that seam. And remove the foam from both sides, except for my seam. I'm not very good with a seam ripper. I'm much better with a scalpel. But when I use a scalpel in any of my videos, people get a bit, in fact I might just grab my scalpel and be done with it. People get a little bit edgy. And again, removing the foam. So I'm just lifting that foam up, keeping my scissors flat to the panel, and removing the foam. Now I'm using long scissors. I always used to use a pair with a small blade, but more recently I'm a fan of a bigger blade for removing the foam. So now we have no foam on either side. I'm just going to make those small snips as I do in the other videos, just around that curve. And then I can pop my hand in, because this has got foam in it, it's actually fairly well insulated. I can open up that side seam and press it open. It won't sit as flat as it does when you've used fusible fleece, because we haven't got any fusible fleece even in our stitch line. It's within the inside of our stitch line, so it'll look a little bit puffier on the side seams, and that's fine. It's just a slightly different look. And just press your side seams open. I know some people will think that that's surplus to requirements, and if you choose not to do it, that's fine. I just think it makes the whole thing look tidier. So we're just pressing those seams open. That's especially important at the bottom of your sides and at the end of your base. So when you make that dart, it keeps the layers to a minimum in the dart, because you will have foam in the dart, so it will be thicker. So if you're thinking of using foam, do make sure that your sewing machine is one that can actually manage the layers of foam. But that's the only difference really between using fusible fleece and using foam.